Can't nobody stop us. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition block. We're here to make a planet. Can't nobody stop us.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the first ever Freedom Flyer Summit. So excited to have you all joining. I know we have a huge virtual audience watching, so in the chat, let us know where you are coming in from. We saw people from all over the world, so this is a time to shout out your city. So as you can see, we are live streaming from the Opt Out Club. It exists. You can become a member. We'll tell you how a little bit later on. Throughout, we want to be interacting with you. So make sure you use the hashtag OptOutClub2024. By the way, in case you didn't know, I am your MC for today, Dr. Joy, and I am joined by Dr. Randy Williams, Chloe, our AJL intern. We do have internships. They're hard to find. We have Orem as well, and the illustrious, my musical collaborator, Evan Greer. All good. AJL's mission is basically to free the ex-coded, those who have been condemned, convicted, otherwise exploited, excluded, or harmed by AI systems. We're here today because there's a new way we can be ex-coded, and we want to make sure that we are identifying AI threats and harm so that we can come out with ways to resist it. So we want to make sure you have a voice and a choice. And if you get nothing else from our whole production today, behind Chloe's head, right, is a sign that says, even further behind her head, that you can opt out of airport face scans when you're at TSA checkpoint. So we'll get into that. So the agenda today, we're going to give you an overview of our Freedom Flyers campaign. Then we're going to have a conversation about how you can opt out. And then what the part I've been really excited for. I'm excited about all of this. We have Dr. Simone Browne. Yes, we talking about eminent scholars. We have Dr. Epps in the house as well. And they're going to be in a wonderful conversation with Dr. Randy coming up soon. And I know throughout the week you've been seeing our social media posts. So we have some raffles. We got some names. We got some winners to call out. So stick around for raffles throughout. So we have a lot in store for today, but first, cue my theme music. Cue my theme music. Hey! And you might be lucky enough to get one of the facial recognition. Okay, so we'll see how we go. All right, we want to make sure that you scan that QR code or go to fly.atl.org and get your own experience with opting out of TSA. And without further ado, we will play our campaign overview video. Again, it is Freedom Flyers. Imagine a world where surrendering your face data becomes the standard way to fly, where every airport checkpoint scans your features by using discriminatory facial recognition technologies that are only one line of code away from mass surveillance. This is the future TSA is planning. Check out their roadmap. The TSA is set to deploy facial recognition technology to over 400 U.S. airports in the coming years. This move is deeply concerning because, though touted for its supposed convenience, we know that facial recognition technologies are invasive and discriminatory.
And as a non-binary, trans, femme presenting person, my heartbeat is speeding up as I near the end of the line, because I know that I am almost certainly about to be subject to an embarrassing, uncomfortable, and perhaps humiliating search from a TSA officer.
We want to interrupt normalizing surveillance. We want a culture that is consent culture. We should own our digital identity and data. Currently, you're implicitly and automatically opted in, and you have to fight to opt out. We don't want that. We want to live in a consent culture.
But it's not just advocates sounding the alarm. A bipartisan group of 14 senators has raised significant concerns, citing privacy breaches and widespread misidentification.
There could soon be some big changes to airport security, despite objections from a bipartisan group of senators.
Some lawmakers are calling for more oversight, suggesting the technology threatens privacy.
Now, as air travel reaches new heights, the time has come to take a stand. The agent said, "Please stand for a photo," but should have said, "Would you like to take a photo or scan your ID?" The agent said, "Please look at the camera." I looked at the agent and said, "May I opt out of that?" The agent replied, "I wish you said that sooner. I already took the photo." There was no moment I could have spoken sooner. The camera was pointed at the line. There wasn't a way to avoid it. These stories of the ex-coded, those who have been harmed or otherwise robbed of their choices around AI, are not isolated incidents. They reflect a growing concern about how our faces are being used without our explicit consent. The Algorithmic Justice League is leading the charge with our Freedom Flyers campaign to hold TSA accountable. Throughout this year, we're shedding light on your right to opt out of TSA's facial recognition program. Share your stories and demand transparency. Together, we can ensure our airports remain secure without sacrificing our privacy. Visit fly.ajl to join the fight for our biometric rights. Your face, your choice. And don't forget, if you're now joining in, you can use hashtag OptOutClub2024 so we can see your comments if you have questions. And again, let us know in the chat where it is that you are coming in from all around the world. Now it's time to jump into the opt-out conversation. We're going to hear from our opt-out experts, and I'll have them introduce themselves, starting with one of my newest favorite agents of the Algorithmic Justice League. She's our newest team member, Agent Amor.
Hey everyone, I'm Agent Amor, or Arum. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the AI Leads Harms Analyst at AGL. I'm really excited to be here with you all, and very excited to continue reading your scorecards. Back to you.
Yeah, and I'm Evan Greer. I'm the director of Fight for the Future, which is a digital advocacy group trying to fight for a future free from surveillance and censorship. And I'm super amped to be here, largely because I think people often ask me, like, what can I do to protect myself from this type of technology? And what I love about this event is we're reframing it as a collective form of resistance. It's something that we do together rather than by ourselves.
Absolutely. And I truly could not think of a better group of people to have the opt-out conversation with. To begin, we're going to show you examples of what it looks like to opt out. So from myself and also Dr. Epps with the short E. Dr. Joy here. I am at the TSA checkpoint at Columbus Airport, looking for sign with details. Let's hit the checklist. Were you informed of your right to opt out? As you see, I was told to basically look at the camera, and there really wasn't signage that was clearly visible. I want to opt out. Thank you. That didn't take long at all. Second question, did you consent to have your face scanned? Nope, I opted out. Thank you. Yet another example of how easy it should be to opt out.
I don't want to have my face scanned.
You see how, again, it should be this simple. Did you hear that? I don't want to have my face scanned. You go on through. So we've seen these examples of opting out. Orm, you actually read hundreds of stories of people's experiences. Break it down for us. Like, what is it actually like to opt out? What would you suggest?
Yeah, the thing about Dr. Epps' example is that it really should be that simple. TSA guidelines say that you do have the right to opt out at TSA face scans. All you have to do is say something like, I don't want to participate, or I want to opt out. Even if TSA prompts you to stand in front of the cameras, in your case they did, you still have the right to opt out. So remember that you have the right to exercise that. And YK Hong, who we'll see on later on in the day, has made principal cards with opt-out scripts for that. So we'll put the link in the chat. It's keepbeyond.com/opt-out. AJL also has stickers with opt-out scripts that you can get to put on your passport or your luggage tag. And remember that opting out is your right. So it should be simple and straightforward.
All right, so we're talking about how it should be simple and straightforward, but has opting out never worked? Or trying to opt out? What are you reading?
Yeah, there are many cases where the experiences with TSA don't necessarily match what standard they have set for themselves. So there are cases where an agent says that you're not allowed to opt out, or sometimes the camera will be pointed at the line where someone's image is captured before they have a chance to even exercise their right. So please remember that the opt-out process begins before you even get up to the TSA agent. So be aware of your surroundings, and if you feel comfortable, wear a face covering. And if you do experience some pushback, have your knowledge of TSA guidelines in your back pocket.
What else can you do if it doesn't work? Like if they're just like being like, no, can't come through, like we're busy, blah, blah, blah. What strategies have you heard folks using when it doesn't work out?
So unfortunately, there are many cases of coerced consent like this, and airports are places where power is lacking.
You can say that again. You know, once I get into that line, doctor gets stripped.
Because there are so many external pressures to make it onto your flight, and often we're receiving a lot of reports where people experience additional screenings or additional consequences for opting out. This is opposite to the standards that TSA has set for themselves. So regardless of your experience with TSA, please share your story. We use it as evidence in our advocacy work, so it's very, very important that you report what happened at your TSA experience to AJL.
I mean, another question that comes up, other than if I want to opt out, how do I? Is why should I opt out in the first place? Does it even matter? And for this, we want to hear from YK Hong, who unfortunately couldn't join us, but is here with us through video. So hopefully we have that video ready to hear from YK themselves.
I recently shared a video of me opting out of facial recognition at the airport and what that looks like, what happens, how I do it. For those of you that don't know me already, hi, I'm YK Hong. I do liberatory anti-oppression work and also tech justice. A ton of folks had so many questions, so I wanted to answer some of them. And by the way, I've answered these in past videos, but I'll make a playlist and pull them all together. I've been opting out of facial recognition at airports for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, ever since they started rolling out and doing test trials. For this video, I'll answer some of the questions specifically about US TSA security checkpoints. I'll answer questions about global entry, other countries, different venues in a different video. One of the reasons you should opt out is not so that the state doesn't have your image and likeness. They already do through things like scanned IDs. And also look at me making this video here, scraping of social media is already happening. It's because we want to interrupt normalizing surveillance. Another reason why it is critical to opt out every single time is because we want to be asked for our consent every single time. Currently, you're implicitly and automatically opted in and you have to fight to opt out. We don't want that. We want to live in a consent culture where in this case, we are asked every single time whether or not we want to opt in. A third reason why it's important to opt out every single time. Whenever your image is captured, it can help improve their algorithms. We want to give them as little data as possible and we want them to
that you were here. Am I on mute?
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. We're still in that Zoom era where we're figuring out mutes and unmutes, but it's great to get that video. And Evan, I'd love your reaction to some of what YK said and also your own reasons for opting out. Why?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's so important what YK was saying about, like, again, how this affects like not just yourself. Maybe you're like, I'm a low risk person, I'm not that worried about it for myself. But if you're not opting out, you're helping the TSA normalize this process, you're helping them improve their algorithms, and that may impact someone who is more vulnerable than you. I know for myself, like I'm in the airport, I'm a white person, I work for a civil liberties organization, I have like a variety of things that perhaps make me feel safer, and like I'm still anxious, my heart is beating when I'm going through the TSA line, right? And so like think about what it's like for a wide range of people for whom like that interaction with law enforcement, that interaction with government can be really dangerous, legitimately dangerous. And so I think recognizing that, again, like you opting out, maybe it's not about your own safety, maybe it's about your community's safety. And I think that's really important when we think about things like privacy and surveillance. It's not just about each of us individually, it's about how we can work together to change these norms. And if facial recognition is normalized in airports, it's really only a matter of time before it's normalized when you're picking your kids up from school, when you're buying something at the grocery store. And like that's a much less safe world than the one we live in now. And I think that's really what this is about.
And Fight for the Future has been known to mobilize the general public against harmful uses of technologies. You already had stadiums and schools stop their use of facial recognition. And this past May, you published a letter on stopping the spread of facial recognition in airports. Can you talk more about what needs to happen to be a large public push?
Yeah, I mean, and like, I think the headline there is like, organizing works. Like people are always saying like, oh, facial recognition, like the toothpaste is out of the tube. Like once this technology is being used, like we can't ever stop using it. I mean, like look at lead paint. This is like Dr. Evan Selinger wrote a great thing about this. Like, you know, it wasn't that long ago that everyone was like, well, we use lead paint all the time. Like it's cheap, like we're gonna keep using it forever. Like, no, we passed laws and now you can't use lead paint in any new construction anywhere in this country because it's harmful. Facial recognition is like lead paint or nuclear waste. It is extremely harmful and we need policies that prevent its use. But to get from here to there, first we need to change the culture around it. And that's why Fight for the Future has been organizing in these kind of cultural realms. We got Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and a bunch of powerful popular musicians to say they'll boycott venues if they use facial recognition. And lo and behold, a bunch of venues said, maybe we're not going to do this anymore. We got a bunch of students to say, we don't want our campuses to use facial recognition. And more than 60 colleges and universities stopped using it.
Okay, Fight for the Future,
Right?
out here fighting.
So if we can do that in airports, if we can opt out together, we can change not only the norms here, but eventually policy, right? Because we shouldn't have to say we want to opt out of this. This shouldn't be happening in the first place. No one should be subjected to biometric surveillance when they're just trying to go home to see grandma.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Grandma, grandpa, niece. I'm a new auntie, so I'm always going to throw in a niece or a nephew. So another question that I have that comes up often is, you just mentioned facial recognition in these other places. Can you draw a link between the kind of facial recognition that's happening in airports and let's say what we might see with law enforcement? People watching might be familiar with stories of Robert Williams, who was falsely arrested. A few years later, Portia Woodrow falsely arrested by the same Detroit Police Department using facial recognition technologies that had already been shown to be harmful and biased. So would definitely love your take on, okay, there's facial recognition in the airport. How does it relate to law enforcement or other things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you said it, I believe it was you in the video that said it's one line of code away from mass surveillance, right? And so the exact same technology that TSA is using to match you standing in front of them to the photo in your ID can also be used to track you as you walk around the airport or when you leave. Supposedly, they're not doing that. They say, oh, you know, we'll delete your photo right after we collect it. But the reality is, once the system is in place, it is literally a flip of a switch, a change of a line of code to turn it into a system that can be used for law enforcement mass surveillance. And I also just want to point out that, like, even if it's not being used for law enforcement, it can still create very real harms, particularly for people that already experience discrimination at the airport. So if the facial recognition algorithm doesn't think that you match your ID, now you're suddenly in another line, you're going through extra security, maybe you're missing your flight, or worse, simply because a racist or gender biased facial recognition algorithm doesn't think that you are you.
Absolutely. I think the other thing I've been thinking about, right, is when people come to AJL looking for resources around facial recognition, we're often also asked, why does it matter? What are some of the risks? And I think you're touching on many of them, right? So there's that coercive consent piece, there's the discriminatory piece. One that I don't know if as many people are familiar with is that the government has had data breaches of biometric data. And so they might say it was a third party or it was a pilot. I think in one of them, they said, well, no more than 100,000 faces were released, and then you didn't have more details. So there's so much opacity with what's even going on. And so we don't know what's going to happen with that data. When they claim that they're deleting data, that's when I bring out my investigative tools, because it's one thing to delete the photo. It's another thing to delete the face print. And so the face print, think of it like your fingerprint. This is your biometric identity, and think of it more as metadata. So if I scan your face, I get some kind of data. It's usually a series of numbers that becomes the face print or the face template. We don't have clarity that they're actually deleting that. And also the deletions tend to be for US citizens only. So you're not getting the full story. And if we don't resist, we will see more expansion. And to that, I want to turn to Orem. Where else are we seeing facial recognition in airports?
Yeah, so we'll have a diagram come up on screen. The Department of Homeland Security has a roadmap showing where all these places are using facial recognition technology in airports. So people can be scanned by their airlines at check-in and bag drop. Delta Airlines is one of the first airlines starting to do this, especially in Atlanta and Detroit. Depending on whether you're traveling domestically or internationally, you could have your face scanned at TSA and Customs and Border Patrol checkpoints. And a caveat here is that publicly traded companies like Clear are getting into this stage, which means that your biometric data is for sale. And then also at gates, the airline or Customs Border Patrol can scan your face again. So in the reports that we received, sometimes people are confused about if they're being scanned by TSA or CBP. CBP stands for Customs Border Patrol. So the key thing here is that depending on your citizenship and where you are in the airport, you can be scanned by different entities, and the consequences could be different at each of these locations. But as a general rule, if you are flying domestically within the US, then everyone has the right to opt out regardless of citizenship. Things get more complicated if you're traveling over international borders, if you are not a US citizen. So I mentioned earlier that sometimes there are consequences for opting out. One example of this that we've seen is that Delta will send people to the back of the boarding line at the gate for opting out.
Oh, we naming names. We see you, Delta.
I'm not gonna get my guitar in the overhead.
Yeah, did y'all see United though with the Terrell Davis? Okay, we'll get into that later. We just airports in trouble out here. All right, airlines.
But yeah, these consequences can be a major disincentive if you're traveling with children or if you have a large item to store in the carry-on area. And as I mentioned earlier, YK Hong has scripts for opting out. But as always, please do so if you feel comfortable and safe doing so, because your safety is priority. And again, we are collecting stories of your opt-out experiences, and we're using this as evidence for more clear and straightforward processes. So we really want to hold these agencies accountable, and you can help us do that by submitting your story. So speaking of the tangible change that we can create, Evan, I'd like to ask you about the work that you've done on the Senate Federal AI Roadmap. So while it's exciting to see that progress, of course, there are going to be some hiccups. So
we gonna call that progress?
There is a yeah. So can you tell us more about that and how we're moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the first thing to say is like, this is a fight that we need to fight on multiple prongs. And I love that AJL is like calling together this opt-out club, because like the first step is just like normalizing people being like, no, absolutely not. You may not scan my face. And like, when you see the person in front of you in line do that, you're going to be like, yeah, maybe I don't want to do it either. And like, that's step one. But in the end, we need, like I said before, policies. This shouldn't be happening in the first place. I loved what YK said about a consent culture, right? Like, we have an understanding of consent in romantic relationships. Like, you can't give consent to your boss. You can't give consent when you're drunk because of power imbalances. When you're in line at TSA, late for your flight, and they're like, come on, the power imbalance is so great that even if you do opt out or say yes, like, you are not in a position of being able to meaningfully give informed consent, especially when most people have absolutely no idea what the risks might be associated with handing their sensitive biometric information over to a private company like Delta or a government agency like the TSA. And so that's where we desperately need policies. And as was mentioned in the video before, this is actually one of the very few things where there's actually perhaps some bipartisan interest and momentum in Congress. Lawmakers from both parties have expressed real concerns about the federal government using this type of biometric surveillance in airports. And that's something where we could see some momentum. But unfortunately, what we've mostly seen in terms of the kind of roadmap that we got out of the Senate, particularly the roadmap led by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, was that it read a little bit more like it was written by Sam Altman and like a bunch of big tech lobbyists than like something that perhaps we would like to see.
It's giving industry capture.
It's giving industry capture, exactly. But that doesn't mean that we're out of luck. AJL has done incredible work around this Fight for the Future, and AJL did a lot of work that got, for example, the IRS to agree to stop using ID Me. And so like, we have seen some real progress on this, but in the end, what we need and what Fight for the Future has called for is an outright ban on government and law enforcement use of this technology. Like I said before, we believe that it is akin to nuclear or biological weapons. There's no meaningful safeguards that can prevent the type of massive harm that this technology can use when it's rolled out at a widespread scale. And so we really think it's about actually shutting it down and frankly, looking at a more abolitionist way of thinking through how we address this technology. And that's what I would like to see coming out of the US Senate in the near future. Let's do it.
In the near future. Well, this has been a great conversation about opting out, what we need to do individually, what needs to happen collectively. So it takes multiple approaches. And I'm so excited to turn it over to our AJL summer intern for our first raffle. Is it a raffle or are we unraveling things?
Raffle.
We're our first raffle. Over to you, Chloe.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an intern with AJL this summer. So excited to be here and to see this great community rallying around AJL's message. So this is our first swag giveaway. Before we give out swag, let us say this: even if your name doesn't get pulled today, you can go to shop.ajl.org to purchase AJL swag, which supports our mission. So the first raffle is for everyone who registered for today's event on Eventbrite. And if that's you, and it should be if you're here, get ready. So our first winner for today is...
Hey, okay. This is pressure. All right. Winner number one, Aparna Brown. Aparna?
Aparna Brown.
Woohoo! I should not be doing that.
Congratulations, Aparna. Now we get to spin the wheel so we know which swag you're going to get.
Oh, we got wheels. Ooh, we serious out here. Look at that shirt. Ooh. Oh! Called it! You get a shirt and you get a shirt. Woohoo! Okay. You're here, we'll give you a favor.
All right, congratulations again. Let's give it up for Aparna. We'll contact you in the next couple of days to send you your swag. Congratulations again.
Woohoo!
With that, we're going to head into our panel of experts. Now back to Dr. Joy.
Thank you. So we are about to enter Dark Matters at the Airport. This is our next panel discussion. So we will hear from Dr. Simone Browne and also Dr. Epps. I'm working on that short E. And so I will start with some introductions, give these illustrious panelists a few flowers. So first of all, our first rock star guest is Dr. Simone Browne. She is the Associate professor in the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. She is the research director of Critical Surveillance Inquiry at Good Systems, a research collaborative at University of Texas at Austin. Her work within the collaborative investigates the development and impact of artificial intelligence, interrogating the social and ethical implications of surveillance technologies like the ones we're speaking about today, in pursuit of the answer to the question, what's good? Dr. Simone Browne's first book, Dark Matters on the Surveillance of Blackness, discusses how surveillance is practiced, narrated, and importantly, resisted by racialized Black bodies in contemporary and historical examples of surveillance technologies. Dr. Browne's upcoming book, because why stop at one, right? Why stop at two? Second book, Like the Mixture of Charcoal and Darkness, uses essays and interviews to explore Black life through the lens of surveillance and imagine beyond. When I was doing my PhD here at the MIT Media Lab, her work was essential reading, and I am so grateful for the opportunity for all of you to hear from one of the most preeminent scholars in this space. We also have with us, I see you curls, Dr. Avriel Epps. I'm working on my short E, she, they pronouns. So Dr. Epps is the Civic Science Postdoctoral Fellow at Cornell University, and a group that's actually run by my PhD brother, Dr. Nathan Matthias. Their work explores how bias in predictive technology affects racial, gender, and social political identity development. Their work engages with the complex ways that algorithm design impacts the beliefs, behaviors, and health of developing humans. Dr. Epps is a sought-after expert in industry, government, and academic venues. Their work has been featured in just about everywhere, numerous academic journals and in popular outlets, including The Atlantic and the PBS documentary TikTok Boom. So much excellence around. We actually used to live in the same city. Now that we're apart, we're getting together. It's funny how that works. So last but not least, I will hand things over to our moderator, Dr. Randy Williams, aka I'm calling her Dr. Robo and Dr. Mechanical Engineering because she made that sign work. Yay, thank you. And all of that, so that she can introduce herself. So take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Agent Spark in the house. You know, Sparks, electricity. We got it. We got it there. So I am program manager at AJL, and I'm excited for this panel. I may or may not have picked myself to moderate this panel just to be in the presence of the greatness that we have here today as a fellow PhD aspiring academic. Truly, truly, your work is powerful. And in particular, with my background, I focus a lot on youth and helping them think about where they should be moving to the future. Oops, sorry. Okay, we're gonna adjust one thing, technically. Particularly think about youth and how they can start to fight for the future, Evan, that we want. I just wanna call out that the way that you all both look at the future, in the past, and the present is making a big difference. All right, let's get the camera on. Okay, there we go. So before we really get started, I want to throw out a quick reminder for anyone who may just be joining us, the hashtag OptOutClub2024, putting comments in the chat. That is how you can have your questions added to this conversation. We see you. We see your questions coming in. We'll get to them as time allows. But yeah, with no further ado, let's get it started. So my first question I'm going to put up to both of you. So Dr. Epps, we already got to see you opting out. Dr. Browne, I'm curious if you opt out as well. But I'd love to get your takes on the issue overall. Do you opt out? Why? What are your primary concerns with that issue?
So I do opt out. And my primary concerns is, you know, I'm just down with the opt-out club, and just having a politics of refusal is so necessary. especially when we think of the uses that not only happen at the airport. So the TSA, as you all know, their purview is not just at airports in the U.S., but also other spaces of mass transportation, ports, subway systems, railroads, and other things as well too. And so we see the idea of like function creep, and our refusal is a resistance of that function creep. And function creep is where the idea that the original function of a technology, it becomes like whack-a-mole, ending up in other places. But the notion that's really just like it's kind of false. The actual creep is the function. And so when we have this expansion of the biometric border, and the border is something that gets instituted not only when we cross international lines, but when we make rights claims, rights to vote, rights to move, rights to have food, rights to healthcare, rights to education. We'll see more and more of this biometric border popping up if we don't refuse and if we continue to normalize its uses at things like an airport. And so that's really, the why I want to be a part of this opt-out club with you all.
Nice, I love it.
I love that too.
Yeah, so
+1 to everything Dr. Browne said. And I think for me, it's also, I do opt out at the airport. It's a couple of things for me. One is that collective responsibility that Evan was talking about. I may or may not be the most vulnerable person to these technologies at this particular time. But I know that like my individual choice to opt out is provides coverage for other people who are more vulnerable and also need to opt out for various reasons. And then the other thing is I think of it kind of like a muscle. So many of the technologies or so many of the data collection processes and systems that we interact with every single day, we can't opt out of because they're central to our work function. They're central to us connecting with our family and friends. They're central to us accessing vital information or vital services like healthcare services and education services. And so when there's something that is relatively more simple to opt out of, which is the airport TSA, I would argue is one of those actually simpler opt-out options for us. It helps build that muscle and that remembrance that like we have agency in all these other places where it feels often like we do not have that agency. So I think of it as a practice, like a psychological and behavioral practice, even when it may not have like a practical significance in that particular moment, or may not feel like it has practical significance in that particular moment because you're just one person in an airport of thousands.
See, this is amazing. What I said to you all was perspective. That's what we're getting out of this panel. So it's not just about the moment in the airport when you're thinking about your flight, you're thinking about making it somewhere. It's about where this technology is reaching into, where it really shouldn't be. It's about in the scope of our lives, when can we opt out, when can we not, and how can we make this not just an action, but a practice. I really, really love that. And so building off of that, Dr. Browne, I'm going to hop back to you. Can you help us zoom out? Because in your book, Dark Matters, you talk about surveillance as like a long arc through history, right? This is just another technology in a longer arc and it's headed somewhere in the future. So can you sort of give us some of the ways that you've seen historical examples of technology informing what we see today in our current airport theater security situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I'll give you a more recent history, like a pre and post 9/11 history, because the airport really changed dramatically at that point. But there were some still interesting things going on. For example, in the year 2000, there was a report that came out from the Government Accountability Office, and it found that Black women who were U.S. citizens were more likely to be interrogated and subject to searches than white women who were U.S. citizens. Strip searches are ones that are said to be more non-invasive, pat down, secondary searches and these things. And so there was a long history of this type of like racial profiling, or what the ACLU called flying while black, that will happen where there's a kind of additional securitization or happening around black travelers. And so it's, you know, for both of us to say that we opt out, it is really making a rights claim to slow down the process and to refuse some of the process when there has been, you know, histories of recent histories of Black women being subjected to a lot of interrogation, you know, at US airports in particular. In 2015, there was a report that came out, it was found out by The Intercept, of a program that TSA was using called SPOT. And it was a kind of behavior, they would, you know, this is the way that these systems are like, you know, how can we spot somebody who could perhaps potentially be dangerous? They might be wearing clothing that was not suitable for the weather, or they might clear their throats, or just be sweating profusely, or looking in one direction, or asking a lot of questions. And also, you know, in the year 2000, Department of Homeland Security was creating these so-called terror scores that were based on if someone had a halal meal that they ordered, or their gender, or how and when and where they purchased their tickets. So all of these ways that this kind of what some might call security theater, like the performance of security at the airport gets played out, are, you know, some of the things that I found you know, interesting. So I don't want to make like a long historical arch. I think that some of my work was looking at, like, you know, airport travel is a very privileged form of travel. I cannot make necessarily any connections with, you know, longer histories of, say, enslavement and surveillance and whatnot, but there are some moments of resistance, and seeing the airport security as about the performance of security, but also seeing the airport as a site of the so-called war on terror, where a lot of the TSA workers are working, literal blue collar workers, working class people who, you know, who are subjected to one of the highest rates of on-the-job injuries for federal workers. And so, you know, maybe there could be some kinds of connections as laborers that could be made there around this opt-out. What happens when automation happens at your workplace? And that could be, you know, some connections that could be made there.
You said you wouldn't give us a long historical trajectory, and then you just did it. You know, everything from, you know, just like living while Black, and how that has always been a way that you can be more visible than you need to be, or like hypervisibility, but also invisibility in these spaces. The history of automation. I'm thinking about, I'm a roboticist, so I'm thinking about the first robots were sold around the 50s. They were like, you won't need, you know, those people working for you anymore. By that they meant Black people who dated slaves. And I'm like, oh, great. You know, it's fascinating how the field evolves and tries to solve the same problems in new ways, and calling it different things. I also love in your book how you talk about the TSA searching Solange's hair, because I've had someone put their hands in my hair at the airport, and I was like, wow, it's not just me, thank goodness. Oh.
Yeah, and you know, and often the folks, at least in my experience, depending on what city you're traveling in and what working class looks like in that city racially, it's often other Black folks that are part of me saying I want to refuse, or I don't want to be patted down, or go through the, you know, the dance of going through that machine. And so to have that recognition that we're, you know, not necessarily in this together, but a recognition of as they're laboring for the so-called security of the state, that I'm also, you know, part of resisting that state security as it is there, as we're fellow, you know, whether we're a Black or working class or gender the same, whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a way that we actually can come together, not see ourselves just in opposition. And I just want to flag, you know, we are having some technical issues. I don't know if y'all heard, but some big companies went down today. So if we pause for a second, no worries, we'll just be back. I'm going to bring you into this, Dr. Epps, because there are a lot of people in the comments right now saying, A, I didn't know about this. B, I didn't even get a chance to opt out. Someone just scanned my face. And I've been in conversation with high schoolers here in Boston who are saying that these technologies are creeping into their schools and they're being scanned. So I'm thinking about, what is the future, like, you know, developmentally, of having school or like getting used to technology where you don't have consent, where you're being scanned. And I know you think a lot about how discrimination that shows up on different AI platforms is impacting the youth. Like, so how can we sort of contextualize this and what it means for us as we're like making this more normalized in society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thinking about surveillance and opting out of biometric data collection at points of transit, like I said earlier, is so important for being able to conceptualize and be able to practice opting out at a place that might be more difficult, like at your school. And so, you know, as parents and as young people, I think it's important to, one, understand the connections between these systems across locations, across domains, and also understand how data sharing practices are happening across institutions, and you know, just be comfortable with saying no. As a developmentalist, I think a lot about how when we experience moments of discrimination, whether that be racial discrimination or gender discrimination, discrimination against a neurotype or our ability status or any of those things in development, in adolescence, at these like kind of critical developmental periods or sensitive developmental periods, the impacts of that discrimination are more intense, and they have longer lasting or far-reaching, much more far-reaching effects across the lifespan. And so if we're increasing exposure of young people to systems that can be discriminatory against them, we are increasing the chances that they will have negative developmental impacts from experiencing that discrimination, regardless of the fact that it's a machine, not a human, discriminating against them. And so we want to just minimize the opportunities for that to happen. There are psychological and physiological implications for potentially for you know, interacting with a biased face scan that says, you know, you don't look like your ID. And then you're thinking about, okay, well, if this is a 5 or a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, they took their ID picture 5 years ago, they look like a completely different person. You know, we've talked a lot about the racist and the sexist implications of this, but actually I think there are also ageist implications of this. Like, how do these facial recognition technologies work differently for folks across developmental stage and across age? And unfortunately, we need a lot more research on that. There's so much good research around race and gender as intersecting identities, and not so much as like, what are the differences across age, especially for younger folks.
Nice. Yeah, thank you so much. And, you know, in case you all didn't know, the same research that points out that this technology doesn't work as well for people with deeper skin tones or people who may be femme presenting, it also says for people who are much younger or much older. So imagine you're in the airport and you're a young person and it's scanning your face correctly. Right now, if you're under 18, they don't do it anyways, but it's a scary situation that we put people in. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we don't want our youth, especially, to grow up with as being like normal, because that's not normal at all. And I'm thinking about the lead paint scenario. You know, it hurts people, it hurts pregnant people, you know, and they're developing children more so than when you're older. So if you think about like, if this happens to you when you're very young, if this is normal when you're very young, where does that leave you when you're much older? So, you know, these are all sort of helping me see more about, you know, the big picture importance of these things. It's like a small action, a short moment in an airport can lead to this bigger way to push back, to resist norms that we don't want to see, to resist automation in places where it's not supporting us based on our socioeconomic status. It's actually harming us and creating fewer opportunities rather than more opportunities, as it's professed to do. And so I'm just going to throw this out there and maybe we can dream a little bit together, but what can we imagine that's better? How could we imagine a future where, you know, what is it? What if you had to imagine people move differently, if technology working differently, what sorts of things start to bubble up? I'll give you a second to think about it. I guess that was a bigger question.
I mean, I can start us off. I mean, I dream of a world without borders where human beings actually can just move freely across lands and we're not subject to securitization of those borders and like the increased militarization of those borders. That's a far off utopian ideal, I'm sure, but I think that's like the ultimate goal. Let's get to a place where we actually don't feel like we need to securitize this particular way.
I feel like that's my dream as well too. And for in the meanwhile, as we mentioned that being in an airport is at least traveling is a very privileged form of travel, and to have just better options for transportation, better options for stability, for housing, for all of these spaces in which biometrics come up as a form of a solution, and just like the recognition of our own relations to each other as travelers, as workers, as laborers, as whatever it is that we need to be, people having fun together, but just that recognition that we don't necessarily need to have this non-organic, this machine to tell us who we are and our relations to each other. That we can have a life outside of a life outside of these technologies determining, the lie of biometrics is that the notion that this machine will tell you the truth about yourself despite what you claim. So we need to have, our own kind of human recognition of each other. It is so important beyond these machines.
That's beautiful. So I'm imagining an airport where not an airport, a transportation port where all people are welcome, all people have the means and interest to be able to move through, to connect with others in this space, where who we are can be seen and held with care, not just with machines. I love the idea of human recognition as sort of like an opposition to machine recognition or face recognition. It's like, we're humans, and how do we see that? How do we account for that in these systems? I truly appreciate just all of the different ways that you all are inspiring us to think about how our individual actions can be working toward this larger idea of justice, this idea of liberation in these spaces that right now, if we're being honest, feel a little scary. We're like, do we mask up? Do we like not look the TSA in the eye? But no, it's like, how can we reclaim our humanity and the humanity of those around us in spite of the ways that these technologies are being used coercively? That's incredible. So as we wrap up, any final words? And I'll start with you, Dr. Epps. Sorry. No,
I was thinking that idea of it being scary, that's how airports and borders get governed, by our own anxiousness to tell the truth, to not look sweaty or shifty or all of those types of things, so that we're able to pass through or to get to where we're going. And so to have those moments of like, of being uneasy is really what the border is about. And so to have more, you talked about the notion of care, is really, not the TSA cares as their branding, because they have that as part of their branding, but care is really important as we move together to, more just futures. Sorry.
That's really beautiful, Dr.
Point.
Right now. Okay. Oh. All right, is our mic on? Oh yeah, our mic is on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Why don't we have you, Dr. Epps, and then we'll have a poem by our Dr. Joy, our artist in chief.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I just want to piggyback off of what Dr. Browne said. I think, ultimately we are here today talking about this because we care about each other. And we care about keeping each other safe. And ultimately, security culture, safety culture is like recognizing that we keep each other safe. We can't actually outsource that to Border Patrol or TSA. It is the community ties, the community bonds that we have with one another that ultimately is what keeps us safe. And so we just have to keep coming back to that and keep remembering the importance of and the power of being in community.
All right, Dr. Joy.
Well, I'm just reflecting on so much of what you're saying about recognizing our humanity, about the importance of community. And I remember some of you might have seen this in the film Coded Bias, the opportunity to work with the Brooklyn tenants who came together to resist the harmful installation of facial recognition in their own home. And so what you're saying recalled this poem to the Brooklyn tenants, but also to the X-Coded, which includes all of us. So if you'll permit me to drop a few verses. To the Brooklyn tenants and the X-Coded, resisting and revealing the lie that we must accept the surrender of our faces, the harvesting of our data, the plunder of our traces. We celebrate your courage. No silence, no consent. You show the path to algorithmic justice requires a league, a sisterhood, a neighborhood, hallway gatherings, opt-out clubs, Sharpies and posters, coalitions, petitions, testimonies, letters, interns, research and potlucks, dancing and music. Everyone playing a role to orchestrate change. To the Brooklyn tenants and freedom fighters around the world, persisting and prevailing against algorithms of oppression, automating inequality through weapons of mass destruction. We stand with you in gratitude. You demonstrate that people have a voice and a choice. When defiant melodies harmonize to elevate human life, dignity, and rights, the victory is ours. Thank you. And we're gonna see who the victory is for this next raffle for these epic books. So I'll pass it over to Agent Amar.
Yes, so it's time to pick the winners for our next raffle. These are also based on Eventbrite signups. This time the prize is a copy of Dr. Joy's book, Unmasking AI, and we'll also be raffling off Dr. Simone's book, Dark Matters. So if you haven't read these books yet, please put them on your list. They are amazing, and you can get them from any popular book distributor.
Almost any popular. I mean, we like the university presses. Just putting that out there.
Yes, we support direct when we can. So even if you don't win Dark Matters or Unmasking AI, there will be a QR code that you can scan and get your own copy. So first up, we have Dark Matters by Dr. Simone Browne. This book was awarded the 2016 Laurel Romero First Book Publication Prize by the American Studies Association, the 2016 Surveillance Studies Book Prize by the Surveillance Studies Network, and the 2015 Donald McGannon Award for Social and Ethical Relevance in Communications Technology Research. Shaka McLaughlin of the American Journal of Sociology has said, Dr. Browne's Dark Matters is a groundbreaking and field-changing study important for cultural criticism broadly and surveillance studies in particular. Moreover, it is especially timely given the ways that issues she raises intersect with debates about police violence and mass surveillance, among others. So with that, we will pick the winner.
Oh, drum roll, please! I mean, I feel we're all winning when we get to read these books. Okay. The winner is Katie Willis.
All right, Katie, congratulations.
Well done. The victory is hers.
And next we have Unmasking AI by our very own Dr. Joy Bulamwini. Yes. Unmasking AI is a national bestseller and a LA Times Best Book of the Year. Darren Walker, who is the president of the Ford Foundation, has said Dr. Joy Bulamwini has been an essential figure in bringing irresponsible, profit-hungry tech giants to their knees. If you're only going to read one book about AI, this should be it. So the person who will get to read this very copy of Unmasking AI is...
And I will also sign it for them. Yes, I'm very excited. So let's see who this is. Drum roll, please. Okay, all right. I have respect for the Oscar people and others. It is not easy.
Can't automate everything.
No, I think we should try to figure out that there was no bias here. Okay, so the winner is Kim Grenade or Kim G. Kim G.
Kim G.
Kim
Congrats.
G.
We'll be in touch with both of you to get you your books. Congratulations again. And with that, I'm handing it back to you, Dr. Joy.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really excited to now open up the conversation to the audience. I know people have been signing in, tuning in from all over the world, even Australia, New Zealand, down under. I don't know what time it is over there, but I appreciate you all hanging with us. Yes, we have clocks for all the different places. So I will pass it over to Chloe to tell us a little bit about what the audience is curious about. And this is an open conversation. So if anybody here wants to jump in, our panelists as well, you can.
Yes. So we'll start with a question from the audience. Is there a way to know if your face has already been scanned? And if so, is there a way to ask to have the scan removed from the database?
That is such a great question because there's so much opacity with the process. I mean, one way you know is if you went through the process, that's probably the more obvious way, but there are other cameras all over the airport where you're being scanned in ways that you do not know. We are actually pushing for a Department of Homeland Security to be more transparent about that. And we've seen that collective resistance makes a difference. Facebook, Meta, they deleted over 1 billion face prints when there was pushback and lawsuits because you had the Biometric Information Privacy Act of Illinois that said you actually had to ask for consent. I wonder if that could be used in this case, right? You know, as a potential way of putting pressure. And so I do believe we should urge for more face purges. And so if we push for it, it is a possibility. But right now it is so opaque, it's difficult to know who has what for how long. I'll see signage that says, if you're a US citizen, we'll delete it for after 12 hours or something like that. Except for if we're using it for data collection or this, and there'll be all of these exceptions. And then you're also saying, and if I'm not a US citizen, what's happening? So that's an excellent question.
Yeah, so Evan had already touched on this a bit earlier, but people would like to know, are there specific measures that you'd like to see state legislators take to address problems, these kinds of problems within facial recognition technology?
Yeah, I'll quickly jump in on this. And I'll just jump in on the last thing too and make a terrible confession. I have not always opted out. Like 2 years ago, I went through facial recognition. I was just like, I don't know, I'm late for my flight. Like, I don't want to deal with it right now. And I just did it. And like, I say that because I think like we hold a lot of shame around this stuff sometimes. And like, we can get all like, oh, like, you know, I know I should change the password on my phone, but like, I haven't done it yet. And I feel bad about it. And like, don't feel bad about it. Like, again, like, this is not about you. It's not, none of this is your fault, right? Like, this is being imposed upon all of us, and we fight it together. And so I just like want to say that. So if you've done it before and you're like, well, now like, you know, I'm screwed anyway, so what's the point? Like, the point is that the more of us that do this, the easier it gets, and the more we can build toward the types of policies we need.
Right, and building on a little bit of what YK said, right, pushing towards consent culture, pushing against surveillance culture. So every opt-out is a vote for biometric rights. So yes, opt out each and every opportunity you feel able to do so. And also don't feel bad if you got the time pressure, you got the financial pressure, you got the social pressure, and you're already almost late for your flight, right? We understand.
Totally. And so when we talk about policy and like what we need, I'll tell you first what we don't need.
Hey,
what we don't
tell
need,
us that. What don't we need?
What we don't need is like something kind of like when you're online and a website is like, hey, can I violate your privacy? Just like click this button, yes. And if you don't click yes, then like you can't use our service that you need to sign up for a job or sign your kids up for school or do something that you need to do in your life. And so what we need are policies that prohibit governments and other powerful institutions, whether they're commercial airlines or retail stores or schools, from using biometric surveillance on people, period. And when we talk about consent, that doesn't just mean another box that you check, or like by walking into this airport, you're consenting to facial recognition, right? If the only airport near you uses facial recognition, that's not meaningful consent. And so broadly speaking, what Fight for the Future and dozens of other civil liberties, racial justice, human rights groups have been calling for is outright prohibitions on government and law enforcement use of this technology, rather than just like, as long as you do this and that and the other thing and you test your algorithms once a year, then you can mass surveil everyone and it's going to be totally fine, right? That does not lead to the type of future that the folks on the panel were dreaming of, right? Where people can move freely to where they need to go with dignity and in safety.
Say that.
Wonderful. Yeah, if anyone from the audience has any last questions, we still have a few minutes left to take some, but someone was wondering, can you trademark or copyright your face or image? Is that possible?
Oh, this is interesting. And so as a kind of celeb, I don't know, my face is known, it's used and so forth. I work with a talent agency, and there is actually rights you have to your likeness, right? So if you have a company and let's say they come out with a technology that sounds like your voice, right? You can actually say, oh, wait a second.
Who would do that?
I don't know who might do that, right? But you do have a right to your likeness in certain instances, but you also have these fair use arguments, like if you're doing parody or satire and that kind of thing, that your likeness can be used if you're a public figure. So in some cases, it depends. And if you make a stylized image of your face and you then made that a logo, you could, yes, trademark it. So I think this is a really fascinating area to explore. For me and my own contracts, I actually have clauses around biometric rights. So if we're filming something, I have a clause that says you can't use this to train an AI system later on. Even when I was recording the audiobook, I'm sure my publishers love me, but as I was recording the audiobook for Unmasking AI, one of the stipulations, right, was that audio couldn't then be used, later on to train a voice acting AI system that would then replace me. And so those are my little ways of doing it, but it really has to be collective biometric rights. So I like the thinking here. I feel we should have a jam session and think through other types of protections, and if existing legal approaches allow us, or copyright or trademark, but also where we need to go further for sure. Not sure if anyone else wants to respond to that.
I'll just quickly say, like, this has come up a lot in discussions, less so around facial recognition and more around like things like deep fakes and non-consensual intimate imagery sharing. And like, there's definitely interesting legal machinations that like can and should be happening to just sort of test the waters. But I'll also say that like in the end, like when we think about the people that are actually most vulnerable to this technology, broadly speaking, they're not going to be people that have, like you and I, right? Like, have a clause in their contract or have legal representation, or like would know to like go trademark their image or something like that. And so I think like, folks should totally test the waters and see like, what can we do with some fun lawsuits? And in the end, we need, collective policy that protects the folks that maybe like also can't be in the opt-out club, who feel too scared, or like legitimately, have a reason that they like absolutely cannot be stopped or questioned, or like, because of their political activity, because of their religious beliefs. And so like, if we're going to protect everyone, then we need policies that protect everyone. And so I think like copyright, that kind of stuff, like fun to play with and probably not sufficient for the types of policies that we need in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another question. Other than airports and schools, where else is this technology being used?
Not Rite Aid.
Not anymore. An interesting place I saw it was in an ambulance. So biometric update, I got a ping from them because I read some of their news from time to time. And so this use of facial recognition kind of in the healthcare space was something that I was sad to see, you know, but that's one area. Other areas you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, so employment, that's a big one that I've been seeing. So in fact, in our workplace, I noticed a little iPad doing a little face box, and I was like, oh no, not here too. So yeah, employment, and then I saw someone in the chat mention having to scan their thumb to get into a building. I had to scan my face to get into a very fancy condo in the US. So it's wild. It's like where you live, it's where you work, it's where you are educated. And just like as a note of like, well, what do you do in that situation? The way that I was raised is as a Black person is, you know, don't cover your face, smile at the people so they know that you're nice. So I don't quite feel comfortable putting a mask on. But I try to avoid cameras if possible. And if not possible, then I do ask people where they're like, what friendly, what app is that? Oh, I've never heard of that. And then you can go back behind and say, hey, can like you delete my data? So you can like opt out after the fact sometimes. And if not, keep a list, send it to AJL. Like we want to hear those stories. We want to know where it's being used if you're seeing it show up in your life.
Yeah, I'll quickly say Fight for the Future has a page, banfacialrecognition.com/stores, that has a scorecard that lists which retail stores have been using facial recognition.
Oh, tell us some.
Yeah. I don't even remember. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Oh, okay. Can we pull it up?
Pull it up, because it keeps changing, because since we launched this scorecard, a few of them that used to be using it stopped. And then, you know, some others perhaps have. But I made the joke about Rite Aid, but I'll quickly shout out that Rite Aid was basically caught using facial recognition on their customers, predominantly on customers in neighborhoods of color, and in ways that led to real harm and discrimination. And the Federal Trade Commission actually basically shut down their program, banned them from using facial recognition for 5 years, made them delete the data that they had collected, and basically then dared other companies to do the same thing. And so I think that's again an example of where like we don't have to just accept that we live in like a surveillance dystopia. We can fight and we can make a difference. And so yeah, we've got like, let's see, Kroger, Lowe's,
we pulled up
Macy's,
Home Depot?
Yeah.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then we got folks like Target saying they won't use facial recognition on you.
Okay, Target, because Target brought to you.
Definitely might be where this starts.
Yeah, here's the opt-out club. We're naming and we're changing. So if you heard your name, it's time to change.
That's right.
Yeah,
You got to change that.
Absolutely.
Be like Petco. Where the pets go to not get their faces scanned.
Oh, that is actually another place they use face recognition in agriculture. Is it horticulture? When they do animals. So there's cow facial recognition. Yeah, someone reached out wanting to know if we've done an algorithmic audit of facial recognition on cows. We had not, but
soon. I'll throw out one more quick one that like just freaked me out so much is that ride shares, and it wasn't actually the ride shares themselves, but there was an advertising company that basically would like hang an iPad on the back of the seat. It would scan your face, make an assessment of what it thinks your age, race, and gender are, and then show you advertisements while you're like in the car based on what they assess your age, race, and gender to be. And like that's an example of again where it's like it's not the cops, but it's just one more way that corporations are gaining power over you and using that power to perhaps manipulate you into buying something you don't need, or just showing you something based on who they think you are rather than seeing you as you are. And I think that's just like, it's so insidious. It can creep into almost any aspect of our lives unless we have collective policies to prevent it.
It's giving Minority Report, and that also reminds me of another use case within transportation with rideshare apps. They have used facial recognition to try to verify drivers, and you've had trans drivers, drivers of colors, and others, right, actually locked out of economic opportunity, not able to take the rides. There have been lawsuits around this as well, and so you're starting to see it creep in many places. So when you are joining the opt-out club, it doesn't just have to be at the airport. For sure.
Thank you for providing those examples. One final question before we start wrapping up. How can I get involved further with AJL?
Well, you can do an AJL summer internship, direct your inquiries to Dr. Randy right here. Another way, we could always use more financial support. So go to donate.ajl.org to support our work. If you like any of the swag you see here, right, we have shop.ajl.org. Oh, okay. I think we're all swagged up today, right? Pins, buttons, all the jazz, So those are a few ways to support, right? So donate.ajl.org. And also, if you want updates to know what we're doing, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Randy.
Yes, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter.
She works very hard on this newsletter.
We write with our love and our care.
Under much time pressure.
So yeah, definitely sign up for the AJL newsletter, and you'll hear about how you can learn more, how you can share your experiences, be part of the movement, be part of the change and work that we're doing on the advocacy front, right? Because we're all places. We really want to create a difference. This is a movement, so please join us.
Yeah, and please fill out a TSA scorecard every time that you
analyst.
go. Again, scorecards serve as evidence for our advocacy work, so every scorecard is important. And you can also become an advocate, teach your friends and your family and anyone that you love or hate about their biometric rights, and encourage them to fill out scorecards too.
All right, should we do our last raffle?
We got one last raffle! Shout out to my drum circle. This is not the djembe drum I use in class, but this is a shout out to you all in case you are watching. Straight from Ghana.
Yeah. So Evan and I have the honor of announcing the winners from our week of action. So thank you to everyone who participated by filling out scorecards, spreading the word, and submitting verses. So on Tuesday, we had Travel Buddy Tuesday, and you were entered to win AJL swag if you followed at AJL United and tagged 2 friends to tell them to protect their biometric rights. The winner will be getting our Freedom Flyers swag pack. That's a Freedom Flyers t-shirt, a patch, and our Freedom Flyers stickers. Yes. So our winner for Travel Buddy Tuesday is...
Okay, drum roll, drum roll. These patches are nice though. Okay, I'm getting distracted. Okay.
Shake it up. Probably sounds wild with it.
Oh.
Okay, Evan. Wait, what? Okay.
Okay, Lily R. You are the winner.
Congratulations, Lily. So without further ado, congratulations. You won the Freedom Flyers swag pack. So thank you for spreading the word. And we also have the results of our cipher competition. This challenge was to write a verse on top of our theme song, turn on your FRBs. All the artists on the song will also be getting the full Freedom Flyers swag pack. Evan, our resident musician, can you announce the winner of our cipher?
I can. This is my favorite part. I'm excited. Okay, cipher competition name has been picked. I was not provided with pronunciation, but we're going with Leah, Soli, and Marone from Innovators for Purpose for their spoken word, Do Black Faces Not Count as Faces? So the winner is Leah, Soli, and Marone. Incredible job! Amazing!
Look at these wonderful faces. We are so glad for your participation in the cipher competition.
Yeah, and a quick note about our winners. Leah, Soli, and Marone are emerging innovators. That means they attend Innovators for Purpose, or IFP. And IFP is a Cambridge-based nonprofit committed to empowering a new generation of diverse, socially conscious innovators. In April 2019, they became familiar with Dr. Joy's work, and since then have been traveling down the AI rabbit hole.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole. Next thing you know, you find yourself in the opt-out club.
Yes. So you can follow along and join IFP's movement, empowering traditionally sidelined voices to innovate in the AI revolution by using the hashtag #TransformingAI. Congratulations to all the winners. We'll be in touch with you to get your swag. Back to you.
Awesome. Well, huge congratulations to everybody. The victory is ours. Thank you all for tuning in to the first ever Freedom Flyer Summit. I hope you will be part of the opt-out club if you so choose to do so. Remember to go to fly.ajl.org to share with us your actual experiences. If you got nothing else from this whole summit, I hope you got the message that you have the right to opt out of TSA checkpoints on domestic travel. And I also want to give a special shout out to the Social Access Equity Fund. A few weeks ago, I literally met a member from the fund who shared with me that they had heard about the work of AJL. They wanted to know how they could support. They wanted to know if we had any Boston-based funders. Not to say, actually, I mean, thank you for Foundation, thank you MacArthur, thank you Sloan, but I was looking around and Boston, what's happening? You know, so we're really excited to announce our first Boston funder, and their funds made all of this possible. They've made it possible for us to now pay our speakers, so they didn't know this yet, but that's so happening. They did it out of the kindness of their hearts because they really believe in biometric rights, but we believe in giving people what they are due in many different ways, and to future interns one day as well. All right, so thank you all for that, and that is the end of our show. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Where's my theme music?
Everyone turn on your facial recognition.
You know we ready.
Here to make a plan.
Facial
Can't nobody
recognition.
stop us. Everyone turn on your facial recognition.